Josh Eidelson's with us. He's a contributor at the American Prospect, and he's got a great article in Dollars and Cents recently talking about the strikes that now are really becoming a significant problem for Boeing. And this is something at the Netroots Nation conference I talked a little bit about with Mike Elk from In These Times. And Josh, you've really expanded on this reporting quite a bit. Give us kind of the backdrop for people who may not be aware of why Boeing seems to constantly have to deal with striking workers, first of all.
Thanks, David. So workers at Boeing make a lot of money for the company making airplanes, and they've had a middle-class standard of living for decades that they won through strikes, and they've been protecting it through strikes in 1977, in 89, in 95, in 2005, and 2008. Boeing, from talking to the workers out there, has never liked having to provide family medical for insurance for people that they can afford, having to pay a living wage, having to provide a retirement with dignity through their pension. And so time and again, Boeing has tried to take those things away. Workers held the line with strikes. The way that this became a national political issue is Boeing, which has always done its commercial aircraft construction in Puget Sound in Washington State, announced that it was building a new line of airplanes in South Carolina.
And this is the 787 Dreamliner. Is that the line you're talking about?
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
And they came out and told the media, they told the workers, we moved it because of strikes. And it's that chutzpah to actually tell the workers, tell the press, the strikes are the reason to put the new line of airliners somewhere else, that really forced, in order to follow its mission, forced the Labor Relations Board to start an investigation for retaliating against people for striking.
Okay, so the investigation is it against the law or not, based on labor laws, to move a production altogether because of striking workers? Is that the question at hand?
So basically, I mean, labor law is weak in the United States, especially compared to a lot of countries in Europe. And Boeing likely could have done what they did and gotten away with it if they weren't so upfront about it. But what makes this case interesting and what made it this national political firestorm is because Boeing came out and said that they were responding to the strikes by doing it. That triggered the investigation for retaliation. And
right, we would be more used to Boeing lying. In other words, we'd be more used to the company saying there were other reasons why they were moving. Here's a question. Do we know what the average Boeing employee who works on the construction line makes? I mean, do we have a sense of, are these salaried positions? Are they hourly? Is it similar to being an auto worker? What's it like?
So the workers there have a benefit package that includes affordable health insurance. For less than $60 a month, people can cover a spouse and cover their children on their health insurance from the job. If people retire, because it's physically strenuous work, if people retire before 65, Boeing continues to pay their medical until they qualify for Medicare, and Boeing does the same for their spouse. They have a comfortable pension, and they make much more than most non-union workers and most people in the country do. They make a real middle-class salary.
So, you know what's interesting about this to me is that this phrase right to work has really come out of a lot of these Boeing-involved discussions and others as well. And it's one of those phrases like, for example, tax relief, right? The idea that taxes are a burden and therefore less taxes are relief, or pro-life for policies that often actually result in death. So right to work is not actually a pro-labor movement, is it?
Not at all. And right to work, conservatives are very good at finding victims exactly the opposite of where they are. So in this case, you have workers being retaliated against. And rather than saying companies should get to retaliate, what conservatives have said is South Carolina is being discriminated against for being a right to work state. That has nothing to do with the legal issue. It's not why the complaint was filed. But yeah, right to work refers to a law where the government, the big government that conservatives claim to not want anything to do with in their lives, right to work means the government prevents a private company and a private union from agreeing in a union contract that workers who are represented by the union need to pay for the costs of the representation.
It's
So for
incredible, right? The hypocrisy is incredible, especially, and later on the show, we're also going to talk about some of that big, small government hypocrisy. In the last minute or two we have left here, I talked with Mike Elk about this in Minneapolis over the summer, and my thing was, when you hear, let's say we hear about, or my audience hears about what Boeing is doing and they don't like it, what can you really do, right? I mean, if you travel on airlines, you can't really control whether it's a Boeing plane or not. Many routes, many airlines are only served by Boeing airplanes. It's one of those situations where it really does feel like the average consumer is completely helpless in terms of affecting Boeing policy in any way. Am I wrong?
so the workers at Boeing are not calling for a boycott. What people can do if they care about this issue, on the one hand, is to be involved politically, to make sure that we have people in office who will appoint people to the labor board, who will defend workers against companies, who won't be trying to defund the labor board. Republicans are threatening to cut the entire budget for the National Labor Relations Board over this case. But more so, what workers have at Boeing is something that everybody should have in the United States. And ultimately, to protect that standard there, what we need is a stronger labor movement in the country. We need more workers that are able to go out on strike to win and defend those benefits. And if that were the context, our politics would be really different if more people in America were in unions and were out on strike.
So basically, the end user's action is trying to influence policy rather than any kind of boycott, which you agree would just not be feasible when you're dealing with a company like Boeing.
Well, I think we should defer to the workers at Boeing in terms of whether or not to use the company's business. Now, we should note that a huge client of Boeing is the United States government. And Boeing workers over and over have lobbied the government on behalf of Boeing to get Boeing tax breaks and advantages. And the United States government legally can't interfere in order to help the workers as a consumer of Boeing. But absolutely, there could be political pressure to make Boeing, which sells to us, which is selling to the American people, more of a responsible employer and not one that runs straight into the pretty weak labor law we have. Boeing has found a way to get itself investigated for openly violating it.
Incredible. Josh Eidelson, contributor at the American Prospect. The article's in Dollars and Cents, dollarsandcents.org. Great to talk to you. Keep up the great work.
Great to talk to you, David. Thank you.